They said Caitlin Clark couldn't handle real competition, that she was just hype, just a shooter, not built for the pros. But when Ryan Howard hit her in the face, it wasn't just a cheap shot, it was a challenge. What happened next didn't just silence the noise, it flipped the entire script. This wasn't about revenge, it was about showing the whole league why underestimating Caitlin Clark might be the biggest mistake they ever make. The hate didn't start in the WNBA, it was already brewing. Before Caitlin Clark ever stepped onto a WNBA court, the noise had already reached full volume. Critics weren't whispering, they were shouting, "She's just a shooter. She can't hang with real pros." Overrated. On social media, in interviews, and across podcasts, the message was clear. She wasn't welcome at the top. Some said she was soft, others said her success came from media hype, and then there were those who insisted she wouldn't survive the physicality of the league. The Big Ten was one thing, the WNBA was a different animal. But what those people didn't understand was that Clark had been battling this kind of talk for years. Even in college, the elbows, the double teams, and the targeted trash talk weren't new to her. She didn't rise to stardom by being coddled. She got there by taking hits and getting back up. In a regular season NCAA game, Cody McMahon shoved her to the floor in what looked more like a message than a play. Her play, and Clark, she didn't flinch. She adjusted her jersey and kept playing. That moment was a preview of everything she would face in the pros and how she'd always respond. College set the tone, but the pros took it up a notch. If the NCAA introduced Caitlin Clark to physical basketball, the WNBA turned it into a contact sport with no apologies. The college game had its moments, shoves, hard fouls, and cheap shots. But in the pros, those moments multiplied. No more soft whistles, no more superstar treatment, just grown women with chips on their shoulders and something to prove. And Caitlin, she came in with a target on her back the size of Iowa. It didn't take long for the league to send a message. Just a few games into her rookie campaign, Kennedy Carter blindsided Clark with an off-ball shoulder check. It wasn't subtle, it wasn't basketball, it was personal. No foul, no warning, just a full-speed body blow designed to test her resolve. The refs didn't call it. Social media exploded. Was it dirty? Was it fair? The debate didn't matter to Clark. She never joined the chorus. She didn't complain. She didn't retaliate. She got back up. Again, what her critics missed is that Clark never needed sympathy. She needed the ball. And every time they tried to break her down physically, they only fueled the quiet storm that followed. A storm made of buckets, passes, and poise under pressure. So whether it's a recovery, coaching, tooling, or bucket, Ryan Howard's hit wasn't just physical, it was calculated. Ryan Howard isn't your average player. She was the #1 overall pick, the WNBA's Rookie of the Year, and one of the most polished offensive weapons in the game. She doesn't seek drama, she doesn't showboat, she just plays hard, and she plays to win. So when it was her who caught Caitlin Clark in the face, it didn't feel like some heat-of-the-moment mistake. It felt like a message. It was a preseason game, sure, but that didn't dull the sound of that contact. A crowded lane, a sharp movement, then Clark hit the floor. The arena fell into a stunned hush, the kind where fans aren't sure whether to cheer or gasp. Howard didn't jaw afterward. Clark didn't retaliate, but everyone watching could feel the moment shift. This wasn't just a foul, it was a statement from one star to another. This is our league, let's see what you've got. The hit wasn't just about pain, it was about presence, about power, about drawing a line in the sand. And Clark, still new to the league's grind, stood up, adjusted her headband, and crossed that line like she'd been there 100 times before. The arena shifted, but Clark didn't blink. The second Caitlin Clark hit the hardwood, the temperature in the arena changed. It wasn't loud at first, it was tense, like everyone was holding their breath, waiting to see what she'd do. Some expected theatrics, maybe a dramatic stare down, maybe even retaliation. But instead, Clark did something far more powerful. She got up slowly, with purpose, adjusted her headband, and walked straight to the free throw line. No gestures, no words, just focus. That silence? It was deafening. It said everything. The crowd didn't explode. They buzzed. They watched, because in that moment, Clark flipped the energy. Not by swinging back, but by staying calm, composed, deadly. Her teammates rallied around her. Her coach didn't need to say a word. And Atlanta? They felt it too. That hit was supposed to knock her off her game, but all it did was wake her up. She didn't need to talk trash, her game did all the talking. And now, with cameras rolling and pressure peaking, Caitlin Clark didn't just regain her footing, she seized control of the moment. What followed wouldn't be revenge, it would be basketball at its sharpest. And everyone in the building knew the real response was just beginning. The Fever didn't just respond, they lit the floor on fire. Right after the hit, something shifted, not just in Clark, but in the entire Indiana Fever roster. The team came alive, with a sense of urgency and cohesion that hadn't been there before. It was like a fuse had been lit, and every possession became a statement. Caitlin Clark wasn't just playing, she was orchestrating. Her first move, grabbing a rebound, sprinting the full length of the court, and finishing a tough layup through traffic. No celebration, just laser focus. On the next trip down, she calmly came off a high screen, saw her defender lagging, and launched a deep three. Splash. The crowd started to rise, her teammates fed off her energy. Aaliyah Boston muscled in and one. Sophie Cunningham hit a smooth jumper off a back cut. The ball was moving, the offense was flowing, and the Dream looked flat-footed. What was supposed to be a rattling moment had flipped into a rallying cry. Atlanta had poked the bear, and now they were watching her lead a charge. Clark wasn't just absorbing pressure, she was converting it into momentum. Possession after possession, Indiana wasn't just playing better, they were playing together. And Atlanta suddenly looked like they weren't sure what hit them. Atlanta tried to match the energy, but Clark stayed one step ahead. The Dream knew they couldn't afford to let this spiral, so they came out swinging, metaphorically this time. Tahima Paopao drove hard off a handoff, bulldozing her way to an and one that finally got Atlanta back on the board. It was loud, it was aggressive, but it wasn't enough, because Caitlin Clark had already locked in, and when she locks in, things get clinical. On the next play, she broke free off a pin down, squared her feet mid-stride, and drained another three. No reaction, no flex, just the same cold expression that told you she wasn't done. Then she delivered a no-look laser to Aaliyah Boston in the post, who sealed her defender and finished strong. The lead stretched. Atlanta was trying, but Indiana was executing. Sophie Cunningham crawled into a handoff and nailed a jumper. The Dream answered with Ryan Howard finally hitting a clean three, but even that spark didn't faze Clark. She came right back down, danced with her defender on the perimeter, and buried a step-back triple that barely touched the net. Every time Atlanta landed a punch, Clark answered with precision. And now the Dream weren't just chasing points. They were chasing a player who refused to let up. Every possession became personal, and Clark made it hurt. As the second half opened, Caitlin Clark came out like she'd been simmering during the break. She curled off another screen, caught the ball in full stride, and drove into the paint for a smooth scoop layup off the glass. It looked easy, but the footwork, the timing, the touch, that was elite execution under pressure. Atlanta tried to throw different looks at her. Hedges, switches, traps, but it didn't matter. She kept reading and punishing every move they made. Clark ran the pick and roll with Aaliyah Boston like they'd been teammates for years. A tight pocket pass led to an effortless finish. Then came Kelsey Mitchell, catching the rhythm and slicing to the rim with a hesitation move that froze her defender. The Fever weren't just responding anymore. They were dictating. The tempo, the spacing, the confidence. It was all Indiana. Atlanta's Brianna Jones tried to fight back with tough post moves. Ryan Howard hit another deep three, and still Clark kept pressing, grabbing a rebound, scanning the floor, and whipping a full-court pass that found Dana Bonner in stride for an easy bucket. In the end, Dana Bonner scored an easy The Dream weren't falling apart, but they were falling behind. Because every touch Caitlin had was starting to feel like a problem they couldn't solve. Lexi Hull took over, and Atlanta didn't see it coming. While Caitlin Clark commanded the spotlight, it was Lexi Hull who quietly crept into rhythm and then exploded. It started innocently, a handoff near the top, one dribble, and a pull-up jumper in the paint. Textbook. But then it happened again. Same setup, different finish. This time, Hull drove hard through contact and finished with a layup and the foul. She popped up, fired up, chest bumped by teammates. The Dream were too late to adjust. She kept moving off the ball like clockwork, curling off screens, catching mid-magnets, and drilling jumper after jumper from the elbows. No wasted dribbles, no hesitation, just clean, relentless rhythm. Atlanta's defense was reactive, too slow, a step behind. And Hull? She was feasting on it. It wasn't flashy, but it was surgical. The kind of scoring that doesn't break the internet, but breaks down an entire defense. The Dream tried to recover. They sent help. They switched. They pressed. Nothing worked. Hull wasn't just hot. She was in full control of the floor. And with every bucket, Indiana's grip on the game tightened. Atlanta came into the night trying to rattle Clark. Instead, they unleashed a role player who tore their defense apart one motion play at a time. Atlanta's last push came too late. The damage was already done. With the clock winding down, the Dream made one final push. Haley Jones hit a corner three that gave the bench a jolt. Brianna Jones battled for a tough layup under pressure. Tahina Paupo knocked down a deep shot off a late pin down, her confidence refusing to fade. But the momentum wasn't theirs. It was too little too late. Because by now, Indiana had already built something stronger than a lead. They had built belief. Caitlin Clark wasn't scoring on every play anymore. She didn't need to. Her fingerprints were still all over the game, rebounding, playmaking, directing traffic. Lexi Hull had done the punishing. The rest of the Fever just followed her lead. There were no panic plays, no wild shots, just cold, calculated execution, one possession at a time. Atlanta looked like a team that had finally realized their mistake. They'd come in trying to intimidate a rookie. They thought one hit would knock her off balance. Instead, they fueled a team-wide eruption. And now they were the ones scrambling, pressing, fouling, and hoping. The scoreboard read 81-76 when it ended. But the real story wasn't in the numbers. It was in how badly the Dream's plan had backfired. They tried to send a message, but Caitlin Clark sent one louder. From the opening foul to the final buzzer, this game was supposed to shake Caitlin Clark. It was meant to be a reality check, a welcome to the league moment. But instead, it became something entirely different. Because when Ryan Howard hit Clark in the face, the message was clear. You don't scare us. What Atlanta didn't expect was how clearly Clark and the Fever would answer back, louder, sharper, and with far more substance. This wasn't just about physicality, it was about poise, about resilience, about flipping the pressure into power. Clark didn't argue. She didn't throw elbows. She responded with vision, with range, and with leadership. And when Lexi Hull caught fire, it was the final exclamation mark. Atlanta thought they could break one player. Instead, they triggered an entire roster. What started as a preseason game turned into a statement. Caitlin Clark didn't just survive the hit, she absorbed it, redirected it, and turned it into fuel. And while the Dream walked away frustrated, maybe even embarrassed, Clark walked off the floor with something more important than a win. She walked away with respect, the kind you don't demand with your mouth, but earn with your game.